Hello, colleagues. This Davis here again with another presentation on property offenses. I certainly hope that you found the first one useful. We will be looking at the Criminal Code again, 1997, as amended, sections 102 to 232. The last time, as you can see from the screen, we focused on theft. I would welcome any questions that you have about that one, but today we'll be looking at those two things listed at point B and C, which are burglary and aggravated burglary. If time permits, we will go on to robbery and some of the other offenses in the coming weeks. Well, in the coming days, I should say, given that we don't really have a long time before exams. So the criminal code covers three categories of burglary, and they are in sections 211(1)(a), 211(1)(b), and 212 subsection 1, respectively. The first one is burglary as an offense of ulterior intention. We'll discuss that in detail later on. Second one is burglary where the offender commits at least one of three specific offenses. And the third one is burglary where the offender is armed with certain stated items. So the first burglary, which is mentioned in the criminal code, we could call it simple burglary for want of a better term. But the thing to bear in mind is that it is an offense that has to do with an ulterior intention. You're entering with an intent. You don't have to do what you intend. You're entering with an intent to do certain things, which we'll discuss now. So it says that a person commits the offense of burglary if he enters a building or part of a building as a trespasser with intent to either steal, do GBH, grievous bodily harm, rape any woman in the building, or do unlawful damage to the building or anything in the building. If you look in the middle there, you see where I have something in red that at that point, the offense of burglary is completed. It is completed when the person, as a trespasser, enters the building or part of the building with the requisite intent. You don't have to do any other things that you intend for burglary as at section 211. This is something you have to get, right? A typical exam question, which I've certainly seen, is one which would revolve around at what point. So you have to get these elements clear. Enters, building, or part of a building as a trespasser with the requisite intent. And the intent must be about stealing, about committing GBH, about raping any woman, or doing unlawful damage to the building or anything in the building. Okay? We go on now to discuss burglary at section 211(1)(b). Having entered a building or part of a building as a trespasser, the offender steals or attempts to steal or attempts to commit GBH on any person. Now, you will notice there is no mention of rape. There is no mention of damaging the building or anything inside of the building. You must note that the offense of GBH is not actually committed. An attempt at GBH suffices, right? I don't think that needs any more explanation. It should certainly be clear. We go on now to discuss aggravated burglary, which is under section 212, subsection 1. A person commits aggravated burglary if both the following things occur. And again, it's stated here 211. Step 1, he commits burglary as at either section 211(1)(a) or section 211(1)(b), right? So you already commit burglary or you commit burglary. And at the time, these words are important, he has with him, and has with him there means that you have ready access to it. It's not somewhere remote. You have it with you at the time, and you have with you your wife. We'll get into that. Those are useful mnemonics to remember the elements, right? So wife, weapon made or adopted for offense, imitation firearm, firearm, explosive. Alternatively, you could use few, which has the same elements, just another way. So whichever of these appeals more to you, then you're at liberty to use them. They are useful, especially if you're under pressure to remember these things. Okay. Now we need to have a clear and complete understanding of most of these elements if we're not to make, some simple mistakes with the offense of burglary, whether any class of burglary, right? We need to really understand it. What does it mean to enter? It says here that entry can mean the whole or part of your body. You can enter with an instrument for the purpose of committing, the offense. You can use an innocent agent, such as a child, to help you to gain entry. In other words, you don't go into the building yourself, but you use an innocent child to go into the house and bring out what you want. That effectively you have still entered because you use an innocent agent. You should note well that entry needs only be effective. Whatever you intended to do or whatever you wanted to do in the building, once you get it done, then you have entered. And this should help you to understand why an innocent agent, such as a child or say somebody who is, not in charge of their all of their mental faculties, say a crazy person or somebody with diminished responsibility, if you will, or with some kind of Down syndrome or some persons would be inclined to use these persons to help them to enter a building. So the offender, him or herself, doesn't go in, but the innocent agent. Now, this is an area where I think you should spend some time. I would even urge you to do some additional readings because it can be a bit problematic to get your head around. So, what does it actually mean to enter? You have to think about boundaries. Now, for persons from, say, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, where we rely based on the laws there on a totally different definition for burglary. For instance, in Jamaica, for burglary to occur, there must be some kind of breaking and entering. This is clearly not the case in the Virgin Islands. Burglary in Jamaica is also related to night offense. It is a night offense, so it has to happen within the night and it has to be a dwelling house. This doesn't apply here. So we have to think about BVI laws when we're thinking about burglary. So what is a boundary? Boundary one, we have three different sets of boundaries here. So boundary one is the threshold between the perimeter and the inside of the building. So of course it's obvious a building has an interior and an exterior. However, you enter the building from the outside perimeter to the inside of the building. That is a boundary. For example, enter from outside via a door or window. It is immaterial whether the door or window was wide opened or closed. Once you cross the threshold from the outside to the inside, you have entered the building because you crossed a boundary. Two, the threshold between separate rooms inside of a building. For instance, passing from the kitchen to the living room or from the living room to a passageway. That would be entering a part of the building. You have to get your head around the fact that you can have permission or consent from the owner of the building or the occupier of the building to be present in the living room, but the owner did not give you permission to be in the kitchen. And therefore, if you pass into the kitchen, you have entered as a trespasser. And then boundary three, the threshold between a cordoned off area to which access is prohibited or restricted, and an area in the same building where access is allowed. For instance, you go to a bar, you know that you're allowed to sit at the bar, but you're not allowed to go around where the bartender works because that is an area that is for specific persons and you would not be one of those. Yes? So, what is a building? A building is any structure that has some degree of permanence. It includes inhabited vehicles, vessels, whether or not the occupier is present at the time of the offense, so long as there is some intention to return at some point. Ask yourself this question. Would a tent qualify as a building. Think about it. Is a tent a permanent structure? It's not. So it would not qualify as a building. So if an offense were to take place there, it would not, would certainly not be burglary, would it now? Who is a trespasser? A trespasser is a person who knows that he does not belong or is reckless as to whether he belongs. He knows or he is reckless as to whether he belongs. We don't have to spend much time on that. I think that is pretty straightforward. This relates basically to aggravated burglary, where you enter the building with your wife or a few, whichever one you choose to use, right? So this is specific to aggravated burglary. So firearm includes air gun and air pistols. Imitation firearms includes anything that has the appearance of a firearm, irrespective of whether it can be discharged. Explosives, any article or substance manufactured for the purpose of producing a practical effect by explosion or intended by the person having it for that purpose. Weapon of offense, any article made for offense, adopted for offense, or intended for offense for causing either injury or incapacitation to a person. Now you can think in your mind of some of the things. A knife, for instance, you could say that's made for offense. A stone, a rock, would be something adopted for offense, or a scissors would be something adopted for offense because it's not manufactured for that. So the person is using it as a weapon, but it was not intended to be a weapon. It was not intended by the manufacturer, I should say, to be a weapon. And then it is intended for offense, if you get what I mean. The weapon can be made for injury or incapacitation. For instance, tie straps that are sold, not to be used as handcuffs, but persons would do that. Now, to a person, there is important because if you have these things to do it to a dog or to a cat or to a horse, then it would not qualify for burglary in this. It has to be towards a person. Okay? I hope that is clear. So there you have it. You can watch this a few times, do your own research, read the criminal code for yourselves, and develop your own understandings. Okay, so take care now.